Konnichiwa minna, watashi wa Liseri desu. Kyou wa Nihongo no benkyou oho o shokai shimasu. Today I'll be showing you the 5 things you need to know before you start learning Japanese. Okay, number 1. And this is one that most of you are not going to expect. But ironically, anime is the worst way for you to learn Japanese. Most of the Japanese that's spoken in anime is more exaggerated. It's more for entertainment purposes. Thus, most Japanese native speakers do not speak like that. Thus, if you try and speak Japanese the way it's spoken in anime to Japanese natives, they'll just look at you like you're a crazy person. So, what do you watch then? What do you watch in substitute of that? Well, the only anime that is actually more realistic and will give you a more realistic form of Japanese is slice of life anime. Specifically ones in the high school focus, because they're going to be not using too complex Japanese, so it's a lot easier to get the hang of things. And it's more relatable because you're going to learn more slang and colloquial terms, because most natives do not speak in the formal sense. They speak in colloquial and slang. So that is what you need to learn. Point number 2, the grammar. The grammar is going to be quite difficult because if you're an English speaker, which you probably are after watching this video, it is completely different from anything you've ever experienced. Thus, you need to have an idea of how it works before you head into it. So, first thing I want to bring you to attention is English is a subject-verb-object language, which essentially means I kick the ball. However, in Japanese, that's a bit switched. It's a subject-object-verb language. So instead of saying I kicked the ball, they would normally say the ball kicked, which kind of makes it a lot harder to construct longer sentences. And when you're in the beginning of your journey learning Japanese, it is preferable to focus on making shorter, simpler sentences. That way you won't mess the grammar. Okay, now the second thing that I'd like to bring to your attention in terms of the Japanese grammar is the way it is written. Japanese essentially has 3 forms of writing. The first is hiragana, which is more the classic handwritten form of their alphabet. And then the second is katakana, which is essentially like hiragana, but it's more straightened. You know, the angles are more tougher and tighter, and it is more used digitally for computers and so on and so forth. And then last but not least, we have kanji. And kanji is essentially forms of writing or alphabet or words or phrases that were essentially taken from Mandarin and put into the Japanese language, and they all kind of have a different meaning. Although some do have some similarities to the Mandarin script, a lot of them have slightly different meanings. Crazy thing about this writing scheme is, ironically, they're all written together. So in one sentence, you can find hiragana, katakana, and kanji all together. Yeah, it makes it a bit more complex, but don't worry. The hiragana and katakana are quite easy to memorize. It can take you between 2 to 3 weeks to memorize, or 1 week if you're really going hard. Okay, now for the third thing that you need to know before learning Japanese, and that is that you need to be using a language learning app every single day, especially in the beginning stages. And for Japanese, I'd highly recommend Duolingo, because Duolingo is quite reliable and they've got a very good language learning program. However, I have heard that Lingodeer is a lot better for Asian languages. So although Duolingo is the leader for pretty much almost all languages in terms of a language learning app, Lingodeer is actually much better designed for learning Asian languages. So it's up to you. Either one is okay, as long as if you're consistent with the one that you choose. Okay, and now for the 4th thing you need to know before you start learning Japanese. And that is, okay, how on earth do I start learning? I know you told me about katakana and all of these different things, but how do I actually apply it? How am I gonna, become fluent in the language? Because that's your end goal, right? Well, all the steps that you need to learn the language I actually made in a previous video, as you can see here. Although that video was made specifically for Romance languages, the steps within it apply to Japanese exactly the same. Last but not least, the final thing you need to know before you start learning Japanese, and that's going to be the motivation. Japanese is not like most other languages. It's one of the hardest languages to master. So unless if you're disciplined and motivated, it will be a Herculean effort for you to become fluent in the language. So a little piece of motivation for you is that once you learn Japanese, it will become significantly easier for you to learn Korean. And the reason why is because Korean essentially follows a similar grammar rule in the sense that their language is also a subject, object, verb language. Thus, you will be familiar with the grammar, and jumping into Korean will be a lot easier. And another benefit is that you now have access to Japan, which is one of the world's leading economies and leaders in multiple industries. If you're interested in making video games, Japan's the place to be. If you're interested in tech, Japan is the place to be. If you're interested in working at a animator or at a manga store or for a mangaka, Japan is the place to be. You know, it is a country filled with endless opportunities. Thus, learning Japanese will be a very valuable language to learn. Okay. And before we end off the video, I'm sure you're wondering to yourself, how long will it take for you to get fluent in Japanese if you can get fluent in the Romance languages in a year or less? Well, Japanese should take you between 2 to 5 years to become fluent in, but that's provided that you are consistent with it. But otherwise, thank you for watching and sayonara! Okay, and before we end off the video, I'm sure you're wondering to yourself, how long will it take for you to get fluent in Japanese if you can get fluent in the Romance languages in a year or less? Well, Japanese should take you between 2 to 5 years to become fluent in, but that's provided that you are consistent with it. Otherwise, thank you for watching, and I look forward to seeing you on our next video. Sayonara minna!